Hello, my sisters in ministry out there. It's Reverend Jocelyn. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about a subject that many of us struggle with, and that is finding the time to build our ministry when we are so busy. Now, more than likely, if you've come across this video, you feel stretched. You might be a mother, a wife, you are working a job, maybe two jobs. You're very active in your church, and people still have the nerve to ask you to volunteer for committees. And even though you're doing all the things flying around like Superwoman, you recognize that God has called you to build a ministry and you can't continue to put this off. Now, if this is you, you are in the right place. And in today's video, we're going to talk about strategies to help you steward your time wisely so that you can finally answer God's call for your life. So let us begin. As we get started, I want to take us back to when I first realized that God was calling me to build a ministry beyond the walls of the church. At the time, I was working full-time at my church running their nonprofit, and I was putting in 10, 12, 14-hour days. I was extremely busy. I also was attending seminary school at the time, and between juggling those two priorities and then trying to build a ministry, I thought I was going to lose my mind. Am I talking to anyone who's watching this right now? So I get it. And at that time, I realized I was in what I like to describe as the messy middle. That season in which you still have these existing obligations and you also realize that you can't put off starting your ministry anymore. And so I had to find a way to still balance my existing obligations with also making time to build this ministry. Now, I sell no tales. I'm going to tell you right now that this messy middle, I call it that for a reason. It's messy. It's not easy. But if you follow what I share with you today, it will help you to identify the things that could be a distraction or no longer serving you so that you can make time for these crucial priorities. Which brings me to point number one. As you are getting ready to create space for building your ministry, there are going to be some things that you are going to need to release. I want you to imagine yourself holding a plate. Now, this plate is probably your Thanksgiving plate. Let's imagine we got some sweet potatoes on there. We got some greens. We got some chicken. We got all the different things, turkey. So you got this nice plate. At some point, when this plate is full to the brim, you can't add anything else on there because, stuff is going to start pouring off the side. The plate can only handle so much. And this plate reflects your life. At some point, trying to add anything else on there, it just don't make any sense. It's not going to work. So we're going to have to identify, okay, what can I just remove from this plate, maybe save for later, but I can't put anything else on. I have to remove some things from this plate so I can make room for the new. Now, this is where the tension is because many of us, we have certain obligations that we're connected to at a heart level. We've invested our time in it. Now, it might be a volunteer project. It might be a board that we're serving on. We might have a position at our church as a ministry leader. We are really close with our pastor and we feel like they're depending on us. And these are things that are heart projects. They were assignments that God had given you. But here's the thing that I've learned about assignments. Assignments have seasons to them. And even though it was something that God called you to maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, there's certain things that I really want you to pray about and put before God to see if that season has in fact ended. Because sometimes we feel obligated to serve in a capacity for 5, 10 years in a role because we were great at it, because people look up to us in that role. But God is releasing us from that. But because we might feel guilty for stepping down, we stay in that role for too long. And when we overstay, there is consequences for that because we end up, first of all, not doing our best. Secondly, we can start actually not liking that position. It becomes a burden. And we can actually block someone else from having the opportunity to step into a leadership role because we're staying in that position. And God's saying it's time for you to step away. Now, I don't know what that thing is, but I do want you to be prayerful about it, because if God has already released you from that position and you're just holding on because you might be struggling with like people pleasing, or you just don't want to disappoint someone, if God's released you, that's being disobedient to stay in that role. And scripture talks about obedience being better than sacrifice. So if he's saying it's time to step away, it's time to step away, to make room on your plate for what God is calling you to do in this season. Now, after you assess what you need to take off your plate to make room for your ministry, now we get to talk about another key word, and that is boundaries. Boundaries is something that we get to set for others and for ourselves. And let me explain. Some of us are very used to saying yes to everyone. Anytime someone asks for you to run an errand, to pick up a project, to step into a role, hey, they need money. They need you to do this. They need you to do that. Even your family members, they know they can always count on you. But you might have developed the habit where you're so used to saying yes to everyone else that you also become used to saying no to your needs and no to what God is calling you to do in this season. And that, sis, needs to change. Now, I'm not telling you to not ever do anything for anybody, but I am inviting you to consider what boundaries you must put in place to make room for what you're going to be doing in this season. Because in order for you to be effective, you have to guard your yes by learning the power of your no. Because when you say yes to everyone, you're saying no to certain things as well. So let's make our yes count by saying no to things that are not in alignment with your values or not in alignment with the season that you are in right now. Now, boundaries are not just for everybody else. Boundaries are for you too, because for some of us, we need to operate with certain boundaries around what we will engage in, what we won't engage in. Maybe in this season, we will set boundaries on how much television we watch or how much we scroll on social media, where we will go, how we will spend our time, so that we can be effective in what we do in ministry. So think about the boundaries that we must set to prioritize our time and use it wisely. This brings me to my next point: how we steward our time. Now, we all get the same 24 hours in a day, but successful people of intention, they steward their time differently. They look at their time as their most precious jewel, as an investment that they can't waste, because time is something that you absolutely can't get back. You can make more money, but you can't make more time. So each and every day counts, and how we steward that time, how we invest that time matters, because there's certain things that we can invest our time and resources in that yield a return. Just like if you were investing in the stock market, there's certain stocks where you get 2-3 times the return. Same thing happens with how we steward our time. If we invest our time in learning and growing and honing our craft, at developing that business idea, in receiving coaching, that's investing our time in the vision that God has given us, versus spending our time scrolling through social media, spending our time watching Netflix, spending our time just doing, stuff that really yields no fruit. Well, if you are struggling for time right now, if you feel like you don't have enough time, then I invite you to really take a look at how you are stewarding your time right now. Are you using those extra moments to focus on what God has called you to do? Or are you allowing time to just run by and you're not even being intentional with it? If you are going to be effective in launching your ministry in this season, you have to be a good steward over the time that God has given you. So in order for us to become a good steward of our time, we must become disciplined women of God. In Hebrews, it talks about this at length. It says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it." Now, when this scripture is talking to us, it is telling us the truth. It says discipline feels painful. But here's the thing that I want you to think about. We get to look at this pain now and say, oh, this sucks. I don't like doing this. Or we get to face the pain later of regret of never writing that book, of never actualizing our full potential, never making the impact, never answering that call. So in fact, we get to choose our pain. Pain now of doing what we need to do, or pain later of that regret. Either way is pain. Get this, sisters. Anytime we're doing something new, anytime we're stretching ourselves, it is this feeling of pain associated with that. Sometimes when we're developing a new skills, our brain says this is hard, and we associate hard with pain. But that's okay. God has designed us to be able to do hard things. And if He's called you to do this in this season, even though it is hard, even though it might be painful, He's equipped you with what you need to get it done. We just have to have the right mindset to say, you know what? I'm not giving up on this. I'm choosing to discipline myself. I'm choosing to prioritize this because I want to be obedient to the calling that God has had on my life. And so choosing discipline gives you the ability to have the freedom later to experience all the joys, all the things that God has for you. But you won't get there if you allow for yourself to be distracted by the things that don't bear fruit. We need to be disciplined in order to answer God's call. In addition to stewarding our time and being disciplined, we also have to steward our energy, because when it comes to the time of day in which we work on our ministry, it matters. So if you are a morning person, if you can find some time or just muster up some strength to get up 1 hour earlier, and that first hour of your day after devotion, after prayer, you make that time to work on your ministry goals for 30 minutes to an hour and get it done at the top of your day when you're most fresh, when you have the most energy. Also, maybe you're a night owl. Same thing. Maybe you used to say 1 hour in the evening, and you put yourself on a schedule, because that's the thing. In alignment with discipline, we have to manage a schedule and say, okay, I don't have a ton of time, but in the time I do have, I'm going to set aside 5 hours a week. Or since I don't work on Saturdays, or I don't have to take the kids anywhere on Saturday mornings, I'm going to wake up early on Saturdays, and that's going to be my ministry development time. And when we calendar it, we honor it as sacred time developed for our craft. We don't let anything else get in the way of that, because we know how important it is to get that done and maximize what we're spending our time on for our ministry. So in that, choosing the times that you work on it when you're not freaking exhausted, it matters, because you want to have energy to give what God is calling you to. You want to give it your best, and you can't do that when you are tired. Now, ladies, as we think about everything that we talked about in this video today, I'm going to give you a challenge. I'm going to invite you to do an exercise. It probably takes about 20 minutes to just kind of map out like your strategy for this. And then maybe you can log this throughout your week. I want you to take some time to audit your schedule. Audit how you spend your time. So all you need for this is a calendar, maybe even a blank sheet of paper where you map out Monday through Sunday. And for just a week, you just look at, okay, how am I spending my time? What time am I spending on social media? What time am I spending actually working on my ministry? What time am I spending at church? And what are all the gaps? The key to this is really getting granular and looking at those 15 to 30-minute intervals, because those little gaps in between, when you find yourself doing those time waster things, it can really add up. So if you take that challenge and you actually go through your schedule and see how you are either spending or investing your time, I believe that you can identify time that you can reallocate to invest it in the vision that God has put on your heart. So I hope you take that challenge. And if this video was helpful for you, do me a favor and put something in the comments about what you learned. Also, be sure to subscribe, share, and like this video. And if you haven't already, download my free Ministry Launch Starter Kit at sisterstartyourministry.com. I will see you in the next video.